Hey, Colette, and thank you so much for joining and being willing to kind of share your experience with cancer. As we get started, just wanted to kind of open up the floor, whatever you wanted to share in terms of. I know that you're in Canada, Vancouver. Any hobbies, anything that you like to do, um, anything that kind of like takes your mind off of the C work.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a corporate event planner, so I have a very stressful job in the first place, and then I also have a big position. So I actually consider my job sort of a hobby because it takes up so much time, and I'm sure it will unfold. But I actually work during my entire treatment, so I definitely spend a lot of time doing that. Outside of that, pretty big fitness person. Unfortunately, I had to give that up a little bit during treatment, but I'm back into it right now. Traveling, dining out, reading, watching TV, sort of all of the like basic millennial 40-year-old lady stuff to do.
All things, all the things.
Yeah.
Uh, you alluded to treatment, and obviously that's kind of why we're here to talk about what you've gone through, your experiences, hopefully sharing some insight, some wisdom, some advice for others that may be doing it or dealing with it currently, or may, deal with it down the road. I guess let's start at the very beginning.
So she ordered a fit test for me, which came back positive for blood in my stool, and then put me on the list for a colonoscopy. And at that point, I was certain that something was wrong. I just knew. I had gone from feeling like this is no big deal to this is a big deal and this needs to be dealt with right now. We have a long wait in Canada for medical procedures because of our public healthcare system. So I have been misfortunate enough to have multiple surgeries, multiple specialist surgeries, owing to some back issues, some knee issues. So I'm aware that the squeaky wheel gets treatment first. So I was really on it. Hey, I'm available for any cancellations. I live just down the street, etc. So I actually got in after a month instead of 4.5 months later. And everything escalated really, really quickly from there. So I wasn't even supposed to have my colonoscopy until October, and this was all happening in July. I had an MRI, a CT scan, and then went in for essentially an amputation of half a foot of my colon pretty quickly, and they did determine that two lymph nodes had cancer activity, and so I was slated to go in for chemo. I started doing my research right out of the gate as soon as I found out about chemo as to who I wanted my oncologist to be. I was being very proactive, went on a bunch of message forums, support groups on Facebook, etc. Searched my neighborhood, searched my hospital, received a recommendation for an oncologist who was quite progressive in his thinking, um, followed standard of care, but was open to alternative treatments and trials and such. And I'm so thankful that I did. I put forth a trial for the Signatera testing, ctDNA testing that is happening right now, pretty much worldwide, but definitely North America. So after my first treatment, the results of that came back negative for any circulating tumor DNA. So at that point, I was very grateful that I'd paid for it, and we were able to scale back the treatment. I elected not to just drop the treatment. This test is too new, too unproven for me to have felt comfortable doing that. But I did feel confident dropping off some of the drugs that were giving me some really horrendous side effects right out of the gate. And we also felt confident stopping chemotherapy after 3 months in lieu of the 6-month standard of care, at which time I did retest, have a CT, have a sigmoid scope, and everything is still looking clear. So I am now considered no evidence of disease, or I guess in theory I was considered no evidence of disease even prior to starting chemo. And I'm just on the watch and wait scans every 6 months for the foreseeable future.
What year did all of this start?
Like, we are in the same year that this is happening. So
Oh,
my last treatment was December 30th of 2024. And I removed that take-home chemo on New Year's Day. And so I'm just 2.5 months out from finishing up chemotherapy.
wow. So everything obviously very fresh, no radiation, just the chemo after.
Yeah, no radiation. Luckily, there was no spread. And I mean, I hear from so many people that, if I'd only dealt with this 3 months sooner, if I'd only dealt with this 6 months sooner. So I'm incredibly grateful that I persisted and was able to get that canceled appointment before, those 2 lymph nodes became a spot on my lungs, a spot on my liver, anything like that.
Yeah. Obviously, chemo is not something that people generally are excited to undergo. You had mentioned that you had taken off a few of the ones that had given you some issues right off the bat. What was your experience like? What was the regimen like in terms of how frequently you were going? Kind of give me an idea of what day-to-day looked like then.
Sure. There's 2 different kinds of colon cancer treatment. One of them is an oral pill, and the other one is an infusion. And I was having a lot of gastro issues after the colon surgery. It was not a smooth reconnection. It was frequent bathroom trips, really, really a lot of discomfort. So they did opt to do the infusion. So those were every 2 weeks. I would go into the hospital. They told me to expect to be there for 4 to 5 hours and then go home with a pump on for 46 hours, which I would eventually be able to disconnect at home. Part of that long infusion was sitting for a 3-hour slow drip of oxaliplatin, which is one of the platinum-based therapies that causes neuropathy. The pre-existing condition that I alluded to is an existing likelihood for neuropathy through a genetic mutation. So they were really, really worried about, causing something that could be permanent and severe, especially because I was already my scalp was tingling. I was losing feeling in my fingers and legs, right out of the gate. And normally it takes quite a few treatments for that to show up. So after receiving that negative ctDNA, they dropped that drug entirely. They just felt the cost risk was not there. And I'm so thankful because the oncologist literally took my boyfriend and I into a room and he said, I'm concerned that we are going to get to a point where you will not be able to walk in a room in the dark because you can't see where your feet are going. They just didn't know what could happen. So once we dropped that down, the chemo actual visit to the hospital really was just 45 minutes. They would give me a bag of fluids, attach the pump to me, and send me home. And then I was able to do the disconnect at home. So I wasn't spending a ton of time in the hospital. I had all these coloring books and crossword puzzles that I never even cracked because it just didn't end up being the big marathon that I was anticipating it to be. So that was every 2 weeks for 6 treatments.
And you had mentioned after the surgeries that you were having some issues. What were your experiences like in terms of recovery time, side effects, difficulties, stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. I think my recovery from surgery, I regained my mobility pretty fast. I mentioned earlier fitness is a big part of my life. I think I had got myself into a really good physical shape ahead of time, was really strong. I didn't feel too down and out for too long, but I was just tied to the bathroom. It was crazy. And I hear that this happens, people that end up having a bag, like a colostomy bag, when they have reattachment, they deal with this. And it doesn't usually happen if you're reattached straight away. And so I was being told like, oh, just give it a week, just give it 2 weeks, just give it. But it was, almost the first 2 or 3 months, I was afraid to leave the house. It was pretty bad. So they delayed the start of my chemo until that was a little bit more under control. So I actually went nearly 10 weeks between surgery and my first chemotherapy, which is sort of the maximum that they would want to do. But I'm glad that I did, because then once I started chemo, it came with a full host of other side effects, from diarrhea, constipation, nausea. I had really bad nausea, which is not actually meant to be a side effect of the chemo that I remained on throughout. So they actually had totally taken me off of anti-nausea pills, and then it was like, right in there, I had to go on something even stronger. I had to stay on steroids. I would have days of fatigue, but not be able to sleep because of the steroids, which I know is really, really common. I had quite a bit of weight gain from the steroids. I didn't end up really having too much of a mouth issue. I think that some of the drugs that they had taken away caused the mouth sores, but I did have some tenderness, dry mouth, and then my hair thinned significantly. It's just started to really come back in, but the back is still very, very patchy, and that was really difficult, because then you start to look like a sick person, and so you can put on a brave face, but not when you've got a bunch of patches on the back of your head, bald patches. So I think that was another really challenging one that I wasn't anticipating. This wasn't supposed to be a side effect of the chemo. It was maybe a little bit of thinning, but not to the extent that I had.
Yeah, I know that, the questions, the conversation mostly have been dealing with the physical aspects in terms of side effects, but, there's also an entire emotional and mental side, especially at the age of 40, still relatively young. People think of, especially colorectal cancer, as something that only impacts old people. How did you kind of deal with just the idea of, all right, now I know what it is, but then also the surgery and then the unexpected news that you were going to have to do chemo?
Not very well. I immediately took advantage of some of the local resources for counseling through the cancer agency here. So there's a number of different charitable organizations in the community that provide that resource, and I went with one and stuck with it. I'm still going to sessions. I kept the information to myself for quite a bit, aside from my partner and my parents. I just didn't really know how to tell friends. I knew that they would take it hard, and I did not want to be comforting people about my news. And that remained, just telling them I had cancer, telling them I had to go for surgery, then telling them about the chemotherapy. It was like 3 separate instances of me just seeing people, and this panic that people come out with about like how did you know? What were the symptoms? Or my favorite, oh, I know somebody who had colon cancer, he died. Like, there's just so many inappropriate things that people can say, and I wasn't ready for them. But I did slowly tell people. I sort of, picked up the phone to 2 or 3 people a day. I have a really large social and professional network. I never shared anything publicly on social media. I figured that word would get out to who it needed to, if it needed to. I'm still running into people now that have no idea what I've been through in the last year. And then telling them they're shocked, and I hear some of those weird comments again. But I think, I definitely, was losing some sleep. I had to go on some sleeping pills. I got a prescription for Ativan. I ended up about halfway through my chemo getting a prescription for antidepressants, because I felt that I was doing a lot of spiraling, a lot of doom scrolling, a lot of why me? There was a big sense of why me. And even still, when I think about it, I'm like, wait, that happened to me? I had cancer, like, it's very difficult to wrap your mind around, because it's not something that you anticipate having at this age, for sure.
And now you're kind of in a situation that I think a lot of people find themselves in terms of they get to this finish line where you're just going for scans every so many months, but that in itself brings a lot of anxiety, just because all right, well, next week I've got my scan, I hope it's clean, and if that one's clean, then you breathe a sigh of relief, but then you remember, oh wait, I have to do this again in another 6 months. How have you have you thought that far in advance in terms of dealing with kind of that unknown of, is it coming back? Is it coming back? And if it does, what does treatment look like then?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like a heightened awareness of every single like creak and crack and ache and pain in my body, which is crazy because that wasn't a symptom. It's not like I had this like pelvic pain and then cancer diagnosis, but I feel like I'm very much more aware of my body. I've suffered from some medical anxiety in the past. I had a really hard time during COVID. And interestingly, I haven't had that so much because I felt that I was really just like under other people's care. I was being shuttled from appointment to appointment and they knew what was wrong and they were tackling it. Whereas I think with COVID, I was like, do I have it? Am I going to pass it on? So this weird mental thing. So I anticipate that will be the case when I'm having scans, some scanxiety. I've been difficult, like it's difficult because I have a friend who's a radiologist who could read my reports for me ahead of time. And I did actually have him read my reports after my initial CT and MRI, which my surgeon did not mind. They actually did the residency together, so she didn't mind, but I feel that I probably need to not do that going forward. And I just need to trust that my oncologist is going to be timely and get to me. I mean, certainly with everything else, he's called me right away as soon as the scans cross his desk, instead of constantly refreshing to see if it's posted online. But yeah, I think it'll probably be a situation where I need some good distraction. Like my work is pretty good distraction. Maybe it's going to a cottage for 2 days or something while I'm waiting for the results, because I do tend to get in my head. I know that if it comes back, it's not going to be a localized stage 2, stage 3 situation. It will be, a much bigger deal. So yeah, I'll just have to try not to think about it. I'm trying not to think about it right now because I have a couple months.
Yeah, yes, and I apologize for asking that question. Um, I did the staging when you were originally diagnosed. Was it considered 2 or was it considered 3?
It was considered 3 because of the 2 lymph nodes. So it was stage 3A. It was sort of like the lowest possible stage into stage 3, which is why I was sort of like really on to this ctDNA concept.
Yeah. Something that I found really interesting that you said, right off the bat, and, having done numerous of these types of interviews now, there are people that are months, even years out of treatment that are still struggling with the idea of continuing to work on a regular basis. And you said that you worked throughout it. I'm curious just to see how, number one, how did you do that? And number two, were there things that you were doing in your own life, whether that be nutrition or whether that be just getting up and moving, that you think allowed you to continue a quote unquote normal life?
Mm-hmm. Big disclaimer, I work from home in whatever pajama sort of situation I want.
Right.
And I'm in charge of, and I'm pretty much in charge of my own calendar. So I was able to, be like, oh, I've got 1 or 2 meetings that day and I'm not going to schedule anymore. I've been with the company that I'm with for 7 years. So they were very, very supportive, very, open to me taking as much time off as I wanted. Kind of shocked that I only took like an hour and a half off every second Monday to go up to the hospital. But I don't have children. So my partner and I live in a small condo. He works construction, so he was out long hours. I felt that I would have gone actually crazy if I were here by myself. But I felt I would have spiraled. There's only so many hours of Gilmore Girls you can watch, and trust me, I watched the entire series when I was recovering from surgery and my 2.5 weeks off. I was so ready for the distraction. I also noticed that while I was working, I didn't need to use the bathroom as much. So in those first couple months, I was like, what is happening here? Like, it's a mind-body thing. So it was sort of like mind over matter. Now, was I the most profitable employee? Probably not, but there was no other solution for the work I was doing as well. So I was kind of like, oh, well, if I don't do it, like my territory is going to fall apart. I sort of had those kind of words with myself. I'm also I make commission, and I thought, like, if I don't work now, I'm going to suffer next year financially. There's a lot of factors that went into it. I absolutely could have applied for short-term medical disability through the government here, but yeah, it just felt like the right decision. It probably took me about 2 months after my colon surgery before I felt like I could get back into physical fitness. And that was like very lightweight workouts at home and walking. I didn't do much cardio. I didn't try to, lift super heavy or anything like that. But I did try to keep my physical fitness up, go for some walks in nature, hikes, and keep my body as healthy as I was possibly able to. I did had a friend set up a meal train for me, so I was getting pretty nutritious food delivered to the house from like homemade that I'm sure helped with my recovery versus ordering Uber Eats every day. But yeah, I also think my situation is unique because I was able to drop back a bit on the chemo, so I wasn't at that full strength that gives people the neuropathy or cold sensitivity, some of the things that are really difficult to navigate and maintain a normal life. So I feel fortunate for that.
Yeah. You had mentioned the test that you were hoping to qualify for, but that eventually you paid out of pocket. And I wanted to kind of share two images with you, a before image and an after image that kind of goes to the same end goal in terms of advancements and what is possible today versus what was possible, years ago. So let me know if you are able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. So this is kind of the before image, similar age, similar staging in terms of diagnosis. When you see that, does that bring back anything in terms of those early days when you got that news?
Yeah, I think that I was facing something pretty similar there. I believe my polyp was 6 inches. I was told it was the size of a walnut, so affectionately we named it Wally in the household. But yeah, that looks familiar.
Yeah. And then this is the before and after. And one of those new things in medicine is this idea of training your immune system to do what it naturally is supposed to do. And you just see the time frame in terms of from left to right in 7 weeks of treatment. What does that do for you mentally, knowing that you still have these scans that, right now it's good, but who knows what happens to any of us, down the line?
I mean, it's hopeful. I have my stepfather passed away from prostate cancer, and he had to go through horrible rounds of chemotherapy and radiation. And I have a dear friend right now whose father was just diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he's doing immunotherapy, and he's still, living a pretty darn good life. And I mean, it gives me a lot of hope that some of the horribleness that we have to endure right now could be dealt with a lot easier.
Yeah. I wanted to, again, thank you for your willingness to talk about this. This is not a topic that everybody wants to talk about. But I do think that there is a lot to be said in terms of hearing from other people that have gone through similar things. And, you had mentioned that you had reached out to support groups and, immediately after getting that word. And I think that there's a lot to be said about the oftentimes unspoken thing about feeling so alone and feeling isolated, and how that kind of just is exasperated when you get a diagnosis like this. So I really appreciate it, and I hope that somebody watching now or in the future can get something out of it as well. As we begin to wrap up, I just wanted to kind of open the floor again to you in terms of any advice, any, if you were going back in time to this time last year, what would you say to yourself? before all this stuff happened?
Hmm. Well, first and foremost, I would have not hesitated to bring up what turned out to be my main symptom sooner. I probably sat on that information for like 6 to 9 months myself before mentioning it to my doctor. So I do have a little bit of a, kick myself a little bit up for that one. Um, Definitely advocating for yourself and doing your own research. My understanding is that there are some oncologists that just really view you as a number, some surgeons that maybe don't have as much experience with the type of surgery that you're having. You're in control. You're the only one that is advocating for you. And there is a lot of ways to do research out there, a lot of healthcare navigators that can help. I think it really made my experience a lot easier. And you alluded to it, the support group. I cannot imagine going through this without the people, the friends that I've made through the web, people that started treatment the same week as me, but live in far corners of the United States that I still have a dialogue with every week to check in and see how each other's doing. It made all the difference because as much as my partner, my parents, my friends, they want to be there for me, they don't understand. They'll never understand until they're in the same situation. And having other people that you could just kind of be like, this sucks too, and they were like, yeah, this sucks, like made the world of difference.
Well, I hope that, as these scans begin, that everything remains clean, that you can get back to your full physical fitness routine, and wishing you all the best.
Wonderful. Thank you.